Hello my darlings, my name is Stephanie and welcome to Teeny Tiny Ghost Stories and Spooky Tales. This series is a brief and short look at some of the haunted places in Britain and the spooky ghost stories associated with them. Today we are talking about Culzean Castle, which is spelt Culzean, and in my head when I was researching it, I was pronouncing it Culzean the entire time, pronouncing it completely wrong, until I looked up to check the pronunciation. So hopefully I'll get it right every time in this video. Ooh. Anyway, Culzean Castle is a dramatic clifftop castle in South Ayrshire on the west coast of Scotland. The castle was built up from a tower on the edge of a cliff in the late 16th century, and it became a centre for smuggling in the 18th century due to the kind of immense network of caves underneath. The castle you see now was designed by the renowned architect Robert Adam, who was hired by the 10th Earl of Castle, David Kennedy, to rebuild the previous structure into something more grand, more impressive. The castle was built in stages between 1777 and 1792. Only some of the original castle remains. In 1945, the castle was handed over to the National Trust for Scotland. One stipulation they had was that the top floor of the castle, which had been converted to an apartment, be given to General Eisenhower as a gesture for America's support during the Second World War. He stayed at the castle 4 times, including once while he was President of the United States. Culzean Castle is steeped in history, some of it bloody. Sir Archibald Kennedy was Laird of Culzean in the latter half of the 17th century. He was also known by the name Sir Archibald the Wicked of Culzean. What a name! And let me tell you, he lived up to that name. A man so evil that the devil himself attended his funeral, or so the legend says. He would do things such as violently forcing his tenants to sign away their lands to him. He was an ardent Catholic and hated the Covenanters, who were members of a 17th century Scottish religious and political movement. They supported a Presbyterian Church of Scotland. As I said, it's not surprising that Sir Archibald was a horrible man, what with a nickname like the Wicked One, and he really was wicked. He did a lot of awful things during his life. There is a rather famous story regarding Archibald. Is there any truth to the story? Well, you can decide for yourself. In 1685, he and his men came across a group of Covenanters. Archibald ordered his men to attack the unarmed worshippers. One of them, Gilbert MacAdam, was trying to defend his elderly mother against the attack. The pair turned and fled. They were pursued by Archibald, who shot Gilbert in the head. Before he could ride away, Gilbert's mother grabbed hold of the bridle and uttered a curse. When the hour of death approaches, no priest will be able to quench the ceaseless flames which burn in your bosom, and no words of affection soothe your dying pillow. Archibald was said to be visibly shaken and scared by this. So the time came for Archibald to eventually leave this world. He was not the best patient to treat. He threatened the doctors because they couldn't cure him. He sent the priests away because they couldn't help either. Eventually, in 1710, he died. The day of his funeral came. It didn't go smoothly or peacefully. There was trouble with the horses that were meant to pull the hearse. One of the horses dropped dead suddenly. Other horses refused to move. A frightful storm also broke out, and then, just as suddenly as it started, the storm stopped. The moment they reached the burial place, it started up again. Flashes of fire were seen to run along the length of the coffin. Some thought it was just a simple lightning strike. Others thought it was the devil taking his faithful servant home. Out at sea during the storm, there was a ship that was being battered and tossed about by the waves. The crew then spotted a boat, except when they looked closer, it wasn't a boat. It was a coach being pulled by 4 black horses, and it was coming along the sea. The captain, rather calmly, might I add, for someone who's just seen a coach pulled by horses floating above the sea, he asked the ghastly-looking coachman, "From whence to where?" "From hell to Culzean's burial," was the answer. Did the devil really attend Archibald's funeral? If he was only half as cruel as he was said to be, then maybe so. There is another version of the story where the horses drawing the hearse wouldn't move until a crow that had settled on them flew away. The crow was said to be the devil in disguise. So is this story true? Maybe not. Maybe it's just myth and legend, or just something that someone made up one day and then was passed down through time. But it's so perfectly chilling for a castle such as Culzean. Let's go even further back in time to 1570. Alan Stewart was made prisoner by Gilbert Kennedy, the 4th Earl of Cassillis. Alan was abbot of Crossraguel Abbey, which is a former abbey near the town of Maybole in South Ayrshire. Gilbert wanted to take the abbey lands for himself. Alan was taken to Culzean and told that all he had to do was sign a document which would transfer the abbey lands over, and then he would be set free. Alan refused, and the Earl told his henchmen to try harsher methods. Alan was taken down to the Black Vault, where a big fire had been lit. He had all of his clothes removed, and then he was tied to a spit, and then he was roasted alive, basically. Slowly turned in front of the fire as if he was a piece of meat being cooked. But to add to the horrendous torture, they kept larding him to ensure that he didn't burn or fall unconscious or die. They wanted him alive and feeling every ounce of pain. Not surprisingly, Alan soon gave in and cried out that he would sign the papers. Even when he'd got the signature, Gilbert Kennedy still kept Alan prisoner at Culzean, just in case any complications came up. He was pleased with this decision, as he realised that he needed Alan to sign another document before the land could become his. But Alan had been thinking this whole time while he'd been locked up, and he decided that actually he'd rather die than see the land pass into Kennedy hands. So once again he was taken down to the Black Vault, and once again he was tied to the spit and rubbed with fat and then roasted. Alan Stewart held out as long as possible, but his body gave in and he screamed his agreement. He was taken down and had water thrown over him, which I can only imagine just added to the horrendous pain that he was enduring. Gilbert Kennedy ended up with the land annoyingly. He was made to pay a £2,000 fine and was forced to pay his victim a pension for the rest of his life. But that's nothing compared to the torment that poor Alan Stewart had to endure. The roar of the fire and the shrieks of Alan have been heard echoing through the castle. Culzean has its fair share of ghost stories, especially considering its history. There are believed to be 7 ghosts who reside at the castle. One of the most famous ghost stories connected to Culzean is that of the Piper. The Piper and his dog were sent into the caves below the castle. He was meant to make his way from the entrance below the castle to an exit on a hill some distance away, to prove to the locals that the caves weren't haunted. The Piper started playing his bagpipes at the foot of the cliffs and went into the caves, followed by his faithful dog. The pipes could be heard from inside the castle. As the sound of the pipes started to fade, people assumed that the Piper was making his way through the caves. But then the piping suddenly stopped, and the barking from the Piper's dog also stopped, and no one emerged from the cave's exit. A search party was sent out to go and look for him in case he'd gotten stuck, but they found nothing. The piper and his dog were never seen again. But he has been heard playing his pipes in the grounds, particularly when a member of the Kennedy family is about to get married. He's also been heard playing on stormy nights, the sound of his pipes mixing with the sound of the wind and the crashing waves. There is a ghost that's said to be the daughter of the first Earl of Cassillis. She fell in love with a man belonging to a rival family. She and her lover were discovered by her father at a secret meeting place. Her father was furious with her, and he cut off her hands so she could never hold her lover again. The most haunted room of the castle is said to be the state bedroom, where the ghost of the 9th Earl, Thomas Kennedy, is said to appear often. Quite a few of the ghosts have been seen roaming the castle. A young girl is said to run along the corridors close to the kitchen. Guests have seen a black or grey apparition moving up the grand staircase from the ground floor to the first. There have been reports of a young woman in a ball gown who is seen roaming the corridors. The Green Lady is said to haunt a room in the castle where bones of a woman and a child were found under the hearthstone centuries ago. Since the bones were removed, the apparition of a greenish figure carrying a baby floats across the room and disappears into the fireplace. Many have encountered this ghost. Others have experienced being touched by someone or something in the Green Lady's room. The room can also become freezing cold for no apparent reason. There is a painting at the top of the grand oval staircase of Margaret Erskine of Dun, the wife of the 12th Earl of Cassillis. There are a number of stories about this painting. Margaret's foot, weirdly enough, is said to follow you as you walk past. Her eyes also do the same apparently. Sometimes when the castle is quiet, a strange mist can be seen moving from one side of the stairs to the other. It always starts in front of the portrait of Margaret. Some have seen an old gentleman dressed in an old-fashioned way who comes and sits in the bedrooms at night. There are lots more ghost stories connected to Culzean Castle, but these give you a little taste of the hauntings and the ghosts that are said to reside at the castle. Before I go, one fun little fact: Culzean Castle is used as the castle of Lord Summerisle in the amazing film The Wicker Man. I never knew that. How cool is that? I love that movie. It's so weird, so creepy. So I hope you enjoyed today's ghost stories, and I hope you join me next time. Until then, stay spooky.